If your spouse decides sex is over, refuses to work on it, will not let you masturbate, will not let you watch erotic material, will not tolerate you being attracted to anyone else, will not open the relationship, and will not divorce you either, that is not devotion. That is control. And today, I'm going to call that dynamic exactly what it is. Because no one owes you sex, but no one gets to erase another person's sexual selfhood and call that a marriage. And if you've ever felt like you're slowly disappearing inside your own relationship, stay with me because we're going to name what's happening here and, more importantly, what your options actually are. Hi, I am Dr. Tangie, the sex doctor, board certified clinical sexologist, and I'm on a mission to say the things most people in my field won't say and give you real options when it comes to your sex life and your relationships. If you want honest, direct, no sugarcoating conversations like this, subscribe. It takes you a second, costs you nothing, and it helps this message reach people who are silently living through this exact situation. So do it now. Subscribe. Thanks. I want to talk about a very specific kind of sexless relationship dynamic because this is not we're struggling sexually. This is one partner ends sex, refuses repair, blocks all outlets, forbids even private coping, rejects renegotiation, and then says, you're staying. No sex, no masturbation, no erotic material, no open relationship, no divorce. So let's ask the real question. What exactly is the expectation here? That the other person becomes a permanently desexed human being to prove loyalty? Nope. That is not love. That is not intimacy. That is not maturity. That is captivity. Let's ground this reality in research, not just my opinion. We know from relationship research that sexual satisfaction and relationship satisfaction are tightly linked. People in sexually satisfying relationships report higher life satisfaction, better mental health, stronger emotional bonds, and even better long-term health outcomes. And when sex disappears, especially without explanation or repair, what rises? Distress, disconnection, resentment, loneliness. So when you remove sex and block every other outlet, you are not creating neutrality. You are creating deprivation. Let me pause here for a second because I know a lot of you are listening and thinking, this is exactly my situation. You don't have to sit in that alone. You can talk to me directly. You have questions about sex, about intimacy, about your relationship, and I have answers for you. Follow the link in the description section below and schedule your time with me. You don't have to suffer endlessly. Now, let's go deeper because this is where people start confusing consent with control. And those are two separate and very different things. Let me be abundantly clear. No one owes anyone sex. A spouse has bodily autonomy. They can say no. Yes, they can say no at any time. They can be in pain, shut down, exhausted, hormonally changed, traumatized, or simply unwilling. That is real. Those things happen. I have talked about this extensively in other videos. But bodily autonomy is not the same thing as total authority over another person's erotic life. Because once the message becomes, I'm ending sex, I'm not fixing it, you don't get to cope, you don't get to adapt, you don't get to renegotiate, you don't get to leave, we are not longer talking about consent here. We're talking about control. This is ownership logic. I don't want sex with you, but I still control your sexuality. I'm not participating, but you don't get alternatives. I removed a major part of the relationship, but nothing else is allowed to change. That is not partnership. That is unilateral rulemaking. That is a dictatorship. And let's address the part people really don't want to talk about: masturbation. If someone ends sex and refuses repair, and then tries to ban masturbation from the other person, that tells you everything. Because at that point, masturbation is not betrayal, which actually never is. It is the last remaining expression of private autonomy. You do not get to refuse participation and then claim jurisdiction over every remaining erotic pathway your partner has. And when it goes further, you can't even be attracted to someone else. Now, we're not just controlling behavior. We are trying to control the mind of the other person. But attraction is not infidelity. Fantasy is not betrayal. And a human being does not stop being sexual because their spouse made a unilateral decision about the sex in the relationship. If you deprive someone sexually, refuse repair, and block all other alternatives, of course their mind will look for oxygen. That is not pathology. They're not bad people. That is survival. So let's bring this back to power, because you are not stuck with only one option here when this happens. If sex is gone, there are only a few honest paths. You can repair. You can redefine intimacy. You can renegotiate boundaries and the parameters of the relationship, or you separate. But what you do not get to do is erase sex, block every option, and demand compliance. Yes, you can say no to sex. You cannot say not to sex, no to repair, not to relieve, not to renegotiation, and no to exit, and still call that love, and still expect monogamy. I read the comments, so tell me, where do you draw the line between a sexual boundary and control? Is banning masturbation after ending sex a fair deal? And what do you call this dynamic? Remember, if you are in a sexless relationship, you are not powerless. You owe it to yourself and to your partner to be honest, to communicate, and to create a plan to move forward. That is the fair thing to do. As always, I wish you safe, healthy, and pleasurable sex of whatever kind you practice. See you next time.